I want to start off by talking about this popular meme format that you see a lot. It's this. You've probably seen it before. Someone's drowning in the ocean and they need to be saved. They need someone to pull them up. And there's someone that's willing to do it, but instead of grabbing their hand and pulling them to safety, they just give them the, a little high five, and then the person drowns. It's kind of, usually this is meant to mock fake compassion, fake sentiment, fake concern, people who engage in that sort of behavior. And I thought someone that really personified this recently was none other than Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. Now, this tweet is from 2015. You're probably wondering, why are you bringing up this old news? This is 6 years old. Well, what is this? Back in 2015, Nancy Pelosi tweeted a picture of herself saying, "Education for girls can change the world. Malala Yousafzai is courage personified, and she is an inspiration to us all." Some of you might be wondering, who is Malala Yousafzai and what does this have to do with recent events? Malala Yousafzai is an activist who, is really standing up for the right of girls to go to school and acquire knowledge, learn to think, so that they can, make the best of their life. And she became notable. She rose to prominence because she grew up in Pakistan as a teenager, and while she was growing up there, the region she lived in got taken over by the Taliban. And after trying to fight, because after the Taliban took over the region, one of the things they did was they prohibited girls from going to school completely. And there were times where I guess they would allow for it as long as they wore face coverings. They relented, but then they said, no girls going to school. Malala Yousafzai became an activist and spoke out against this shenanigans, and rightfully so. And eventually, the Taliban did not take too kindly to her activism. And as you can see, on October 9, 2012, while on a bus in the Swat district, after taking an exam, Yousafzai and two other girls were shot in the face by Taliban gunmen in an assassination attempt in retaliation for her activism. The gunmen fled the scene. And this is someone that Nancy Pelosi has sat down and talked to. And Malala Yousafzai actually talks a lot about what life was like under the Taliban in her book, I Am Malala. And I revisited it earlier this week. And you can see it right here. There's a lot of highlights. You can see Malala says, banners that read, "Women Not Allowed," were strung up at the entrance to the market. All music and electronic shops were shut down. Fazlullah, who was one of the leaders of the Taliban and had a radio show in this region called Radio Mullah, where he would really preach Sharia law and, Islamic morality, and eventually started engaging, as you'll see, in public intimidation and issuing edicts and commandments. Fazlullah even outlawed an old-fashioned children's game called Karom, where we flick discs across a wooden board. He had started announcing the names of schoolgirls on his radio show. "Miss So-and-so has stopped going to school and will go to heaven," he said. Or, "Miss So-and-so has left school and I congratulate her parents. My mother now insisted that I never walk to school by myself for fear that I would be seen alone in my school uniform by the Taliban. Every day I noticed that a few more of our classmates were missing, and every night on his radio show, Fazlullah kept up his attacks, saying that girls who went to school were not good Muslims, that we would go to hell." Goes on to say, Fazlullah had set up a public court to enforce his edicts, and his men were now flogging or killing policemen, government officials, and other men and women who disobeyed him. Hundreds gathered to watch the flogging, shouting Allahu Akbar, God be great, with each lash. Sometimes people said Fazlullah arrived at the proceedings galloping in on a black horse. Much of Fazlullah's justice was exacted in the dead of night. Later in his reign of terror, violators were dragged from their homes and killed. Their bodies would be displayed in the Green Square the next morning, often with a note pinned to their body saying, "This is what happens to spies and infidels," or "Do not touch this body until 11 a.m. or you will be next." Before long, people had a new name for the Green Square. They started calling it the Bloody Square. And there's a lot of anecdotes. At one point, she talks about how they were really opposed to Western media, pretty much all media. And Malala and her siblings liked watching TV at night. She particularly was a fan of Bollywood. And I guess at one point, Taliban members were going around at night, listening, spying on people. And if they found out that someone was watching television, they would kick in the door and smash their TV, to the point where Malala put her TV in a closet and her siblings would watch the TV all the way pretty much on mute, turn it down so low that no one could hear. But I think this last excerpt is really telling. She mentions a story about how one day her mother went to the market to buy a gift, and a big burly Taliban member accosted her and blocked her, saying, "I could beat you, you know, for leaving your home without a proper burqa. Do you understand?" My mother was angry and frightened. He meant a shutterstock burqa, which covers the whole face with only a mesh grill to see through. She was wearing a fashion burqa and did not own any other kind. She said, "Yes, okay." She said, "I will wear this in the future." She had never told a lie before, but then again, she had never been confronted at the market by a man with a machine gun before. "Good," said the man. "Next time, I will not be so nice to you." And finally, one day, Malala speaking, one day I came home to find my father and his friends watching a video on his phone. I leaned in to see what the fuss was about. In the video, a teenage girl wearing a black burqa and red trousers was lying face down on the ground being flogged in broad daylight by a bearded man in a black turban. "Please stop it," she begged in between screams and whimpers as each blow was delivered. "In the name of Allah, I am dying." You could hear the Talib shouting, "Hold her down, hold her hands down." At one point during the flogging, her burqa slipped to reveal her trousers. The beating stopped for a moment so the men could cover her up again. Then they went back to beating her. A crowd had gathered but did nothing. One of the girl's relatives even volunteered to help hold her down. By the time it was over, she had been struck 34 times. A few days later, the video was everywhere, even on TV, and the Taliban took credit. This woman came out of her house with a man who was not her husband, so we had to punish her, a spokesman said. Some boundaries cannot be crossed. So that's what life under the Taliban is like. This is someone who spoke with Nancy Pelosi. So what do you think happened recently after President jibber-jabbering Joe Biden decided to withdraw from Afghanistan, completely withdraw presence from Afghanistan without any assurances or security for our allies in Afghanistan, people who, the tens of thousands of people who have worked with the U.S. government, as the Taliban has been taking over territory over the last few months? What did the Speaker of the House have to say about all that? Well, this is from the Speaker of the House's website. She said, "The president is to be commended for a strong leadership and exceptional focus on bringing American military involvement in Afghanistan to an end. He does so ensuring that Americans and our Afghan partners make it to safety as soon as possible. And with the continuing laser focus on counterterrorism efforts to protect U.S. interests at home and abroad. In the days and weeks ahead, the Congress will continue to receive additional briefings from the administration as we continue to work together on the evolving security situation in Afghanistan." And after it became clear that the Taliban was probably going to take Afghanistan over, and there were growing concerns of people, what the people in Afghanistan will have to suffer through with the Taliban, especially women, Nancy Pelosi reportedly said that she was deeply concerned for women amid Taliban gains in Afghanistan. saying that the Taliban must know that the world is watching its actions. We are deeply concerned about reports regarding the Taliban's brutal treatment of all Afghans, especially women and girls. Any political
House
settlement
Speaker
that
Nancy Pelosi.
any political settlement that the Afghans pursue to avert bloodshed must include having women at the table. Good luck with that. The fate of women and girls in Afghanistan is critical to the future of Afghanistan. We strive to assist women. We must recognize that their voices are important, and we all must listen to them for solutions respectful of their culture, Pelosi said. And this, I feel, is the high five. All this talk about the Taliban must know we're watching their actions, and we really care about the plight of women. I mean, how can you even pretend like you didn't know? It's not like she can just feign ignorance, like, oh, gee whiz, oh, shucks, you guys, I didn't know the Taliban was this bad. You literally sat down with Malala Yousafzai. I get the impression that you knew at least a little bit on how awful the Taliban is. But you know what? She is right. The world is watching. The world certainly is watching as the Taliban takes back the entire country of Afghanistan. But you know what? Maybe there is some optimism because apparently the Taliban has promised that under Islamic rule that women will have rights. High five, you guys.